Welcome to your Passaggi Professor, a podcast for singers who want tools to bridge the gap between the hard skills we learn in music school and the soft skills we need to live focused, intentional lives. I'm your host, Sarah Neely, voice professor, director, and certified life coach. Each week, we'll talk about mindset, emotional regulation, boundaries, and more so you can navigate the Passaggi of your life, both on and off the stage. Welcome back, singers. I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to apologize in advance. I think I've caught a little cold, so my nose is running and I'm all stuffed up, but hopefully it won't affect my speaking voice too much. So today we are going to talk about the dreaded F word. Dun, dun, dun. But it's feelings and emotions and, feeling all the feels. But first, I just want to say I hope you got a lot out of last week's episode on the marble, because for me, learning that circumstances are neutral and that my thoughts create my feelings was completely eye-opening. I felt so much power, so much freedom. And then the pendulum swung back the other way. And what I didn't expect was how quickly I could start using that same awareness to make myself feel worse. I started to weaponize my rational thinking against my emotional experience. I would notice a negative feeling and immediately think things like, I know this isn't a big deal. I know everything will be fine. I shouldn't feel this way. And instead of feeling better, I spiraled. And my body got tighter, my nervous system got all fuzzy and upset, and the emotion actually stuck around longer. So that's why this episode today is all about feelings, and more specifically, how to process negative emotions in a way that actually helps us grow instead of trapping us in resistance, overwhelm, or self-judgment. There's one thing I wish I could do in this world. It would be to help everyone build emotional maturity. Because honestly, so many of the issues we see in art, in institutions, in relationships, they come from situations brought up by people who have never learned how to feel discomfort. But here's the thing. We cannot control other people. We can only control ourselves. And that is the entire point of learning these emotional regulation tools. So one quick caveat before we go further, when you start learning tools like this, you'll probably become much more aware of how other people are thinking, reacting, and behaving. And it will be very tempting to psychoanalyze them, to run their model, to diagnose their emotions, and all of that stuff, and apply this work to them. But resist the urge. Notice it and bring your attention back to you, because that's where your power is. So let's talk about emotions. What are they really? I don't know about you, but I was never taught what emotions actually are or how to regulate them growing up. So here's the simplest, most freeing definition I know. Emotions are vibrations in your body. That's it. They're energetic states, real physical experiences moving through your nervous system. And when they're negative, they can feel really scary. But here's the truth I want you to sit with for a moment. An emotion is just energy, and it will always eventually pass or change. Just like muscles growing by being stressed and rebuilt, our emotional capacity grows by going through discomfort, not by avoiding it. This is true in life, and it's absolutely true in singing. For singers, emotions don't stay abstract. They show up physically as tight throats, shallow breathing, locked ribs, jaw tension, high note anxiety, fatigue, inconsistent coordination, then the list goes on. Unprocessed emotions become unconscious physical tension. And if we never practice feeling emotions while staying embodied and aware, we won't magically access release under pressure on stage. And this is why emotional awareness is the vocal skill. Practicing awareness specifically during practice sessions teaches your body how to stay available, even when nerves, frustration, or disappointment are present. Right now I'm reading that book, The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, and it's basically about the law of attraction and manifestation, but it really ties in very well to all our concepts that we've talked about, like the model and what we'll talk about today. Only she frames it a little bit differently. We say thoughts create feelings, feelings create actions, actions create results. And she simplifies it. She says, thoughts become things. And that you have to make sure your thoughts are creating positive vibrations, aka emotions in your body, in order to attract the things that you want in life. So I've been thinking a lot about that. And what's so fascinating to me as a singer is how well this applies to vibration in general. We're trained to pay attention to vibration all the time, specifically if you're a more advanced singer. If you're a younger singer, you're working towards that. You want to be very aware of the sympathetic vibration in your body, your vocal resonance, your vowel tuning. We know immediately when something feels free versus forced. And emotions work the same way. It's easy to create a thought that sounds quote unquote positive, but that's actually creating tension in your body or negative vibration, and it doesn't actually move you toward the result you want. For example, a thought like, don't crack the high note, seems good, like it's got good intention, but focusing on the negative part of that, of what you don't want, is actually going to create the negative vibration in your body, that negative emotion of fear, like here comes the high note, don't crack it. And that actually attracts the result of you cracking the high note. So this really reminds me that however we're applying these mindset tools, we always, always, always have to make sure that we're bringing it back and paying close attention to our body. And, ask yourself, what vibration does this create in my body? The goal is not to skip negative emotions or avoid them. It's to move through them. We want to allow ourselves to process the emotion slowly and intentionally, the same way that we would work through tension in our voice. When we don't know how to feel negative emotions, we, as human beings, tend to fall into three predictable patterns. The first one is resisting. Resisting feels like fighting the emotion. That could show up as a thought like, I shouldn't feel this way. I know better. Why am I still upset? But words like should and shouldn't are red flags. They should always make you realize that you're resisting something. And resisting often looks productive or rational, but it actually creates more tension. And for me, resisting emotions doesn't actually make them go away, it makes them worse. It's like adding a whole level of unnecessary suffering on top of the already negative emotion that you're feeling. Now, the second pattern is reacting. Reacting shows up like acting out the emotion. That's like yelling or snapping or crying. And sometimes this feels like you're processing the emotion, like you're feeling the feel. But most of the time, it's actually indulging in the emotion. To process an emotion, you don't have to do anything with it. You just have to feel the vibration and let it pass through you. Reacting gives you temporary relief, but it often creates bigger problems like damaged relationships, regret, or even professional consequences. So awareness helps us pause and choose differently. The third pattern that we can fall into, which is very, very common, is avoiding. This is like using alcohol, shopping, food, overworking, doom scrolling. Anytime we feel upset or a negative emotion, it's so easy in our culture to just go straight to one of those vices to distract ourselves from that emotion, but then we don't actually process it. And this avoidance, it gives us a quick dopamine hit, but it actually keeps us stuck. There's no version of success without disappointment, frustration, or grief. Everything in life is going to be 50% good and 50% bad. That's a mindset we can use to help us reduce some of that unnecessary suffering when we are in that 50% bad time. So let's talk a little bit about processing negative emotions. This is something really big. So here's what we're going to do. Step 1, you have to notice the emotion. Got to be aware of it. Step 2, name it. Step 3, describe it. Describe how it shows up in your body. Is it heavy? Does it feel tight or hot? Where do you feel it? Is it in your chest, in your head, in your gut? Wherever that emotion shows up for you, just without judgment, without any, this is wrong or right or good or bad or, what have you, just notice, name, describe. And then imagine that the emotion is like a heavy bag. Maybe you've got a backpack full of giant Baron opera scores or all your favorite musicals, and it's heavy. And just allow yourself to carry that bag with you. Step 5, notice whether you're resisting, reacting, or avoiding. And when you notice that, come up with some kind of a neutral, interrupting thought just to stop you from doing any of those actions, right? Maybe something like, this won't help, or that's not worth it. Have a plan, have a thought that you can use to just notice and stop that resisting action or the reacting action or the avoiding, right? Step 7, which I find very, very helpful when I feel like I'm spiraling in a negative emotion, is doing something called a thought download, or sometimes I call it a brain dump. You can call it whatever you want. That's basically, taking pen and paper, physically writing as opposed to typing, and just dump all of your thoughts down on the page. Get them all out of your head. Don't worry about it being messy. Don't worry about it being intelligible handwriting. It doesn't need to be grammatically correct. Just get all the thoughts and feelings out of your head and onto the paper. Now, step 8 is practice supportive thoughts. These are thoughts like, nothing has gone wrong. I can do hard things. This is just me being human. My capacity is growing. Something like that. You can come up with your own supportive thought too, but make sure, again, that you're tracking the result of that thought in your body. Does it make you feel a little better? Remember, it's not going to magically erase the negative emotion, but is it helping you move to a better place, or is it making you feel guilty for being upset and making it worse? Find something that works for you. And most of all, remember, there is no deadline for processing pain or negative emotion. So if you need to repeat that process, do it as many times as it takes. Carry your little backpack around with your heavy emotion for as long as it takes. But do your best to notice and avoid resisting, reacting, or avoiding. So let's use an example. Imagine that you are auditioning for a role, whether it's a musical or an opera or something, and you don't get cast. Now, that's probably going to make you feel really disappointed, sad, or frustrated, something like that. And those feelings are important, right? But here's where the patterns can show up. You can very quickly resist that experience and turn that disappointment into shame or self-criticism. You can react and turn into bitterness and outward negativity and start blaming everyone and everything else for you not getting cast. Or you can avoid and end up over drinking, and that's going to affect the way that you're showing up in your practice and your preparation for your next audition. But I encourage you to allow the emotions and grieve the experience so that you can continue to grow. It creates space to feel what's there without getting stuck, so you can reflect, learn, and keep moving forward with clarity and self-respect. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this. We can talk through a quick model of the situation. So remember, the circumstance is always neutral. So in this case, you didn't get cast in the role you wanted. That's just a fact. There's no emotion in that statement. The thought is what creates the emotion, right? What's the story that you're telling about that circumstance? Is it a thought like, it's not fair? They don't see my potential. I'm not good enough. They only cast that person because they know them or because of how they look. Can you see that these are thoughts and these are not actual facts? And those thoughts create feelings like resentment, shame, discouragement, and that is going to directly show up in your body as a vibration. But what results do those feelings create? So if your thought is it's not fair and your feeling is resentment, and your action is walking into that audition room the next time with a chip on your shoulder, already believing that they're not going to cast you, and that is not going to result in you giving your best performance and getting cast, right? Or if your thought is, I'm not good enough, that can lead to a feeling of shame. And then that leads to an action of not performing fully in the moment, not being fully expressive because you already believe that you're not good enough. And of course, the result of that is not getting cast because you didn't give a fully embodied performance. Really, what's important here is that we don't judge these thoughts and feelings. They're normal. But now that we're aware of them, we get to decide if those thoughts are serving us. Is that going to get us to the result we want of being cast? And if the answer is no, we have to choose the next believable thought. Remember, we're going to do one ladder rung at a time to get us moving towards the result we want. But this always starts first with processing the negative emotion, feeling it without reacting, without avoiding, without resisting. So in this example, maybe our next believable or ladder thought is something like, this casting decision doesn't define my worth. I can use this experience to grow. I don't have the full picture yet. Or I'm building resilience as a performer. And if any of those thoughts feel believable to you, choose one and roll with it. These are not going to erase disappointment or feeling sad that you didn't get cast, but they're going to help you move towards a feeling that's more grounded, more open, and more engaged and empowered so that you can get the result you want in the end. Now remember, negative emotions are not the problem. It's avoiding them that is. So when you do this, you add a whole extra level of unnecessary suffering on top of the emotion that's already bad. When you learn to feel emotions fully, your capacity expands. And that's a superpower. I hope you find that helpful. Let me know. Try it out. See how it goes. And stay tuned because next week we're going to continue this conversation by talking about buffering, which is really just another way of saying avoiding emotions. We'll look more closely at how buffering shows up for singers through overworking, overpracticing, overthinking, overscrolling, overdrinking, all the ways we try to escape discomfort instead of feeling it. If today's episode resonated, you'll definitely want to join me for that one. Thank you so much for listening to Your Passaggi Professor with Sarah Neely. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen. This really helps the podcast reach more singers just like you. And if you're ready to learn the life skills that smooth the Passaggi of your life, you can follow me on Instagram at your_Passaggi_professor. That's Passaggi with 2 S's and 2 G's. There's a link in my bio where you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter and learn more about working with me. See you next time.